everyone! In our last lesson, we were finding the volume of a cone. And when we were finding the volume of a cone, we learned that it is just the same thing as finding the volume of a cylinder, except you had to divide it by 3, or 1/3 of that cylinder. Today we're going to do the exact same thing, except we're going to be solving for the height. So just like we did in volume of a cylinder where we had to isolate the variable and find h, we're doing the exact same thing for a cone. The only difference between this lesson and our last lesson is a dividing by 3 before we isolate the variable. So let's go ahead and look at our formula. So the formula that we will be using for this unit is volume equals pi r squared times the height. And we are dividing that all by 3. We're just going to sub in anything that we know when we're given the diagram. For example, diagram A has a cone that happens to be laying on its side. It's still a cone, it's still a 3D shape, and we are just going to be finding whatever is missing. And in this case, what happens to be missing is the height. And if we remember, height is always on that right angle. It makes the H, the letter H. So there is our height. In this cone, our radius is 9 feet. And it tells us that the volume of this cone happens to be 956 feet cubed. So our job is going to be to solve for h as we are subbing in whatever it is that we have and finding what we don't have. So let's go ahead and start with pi. We know that pi equals 3.14. That's what we're using for pi. Our radius happens to be 9 feet. So we're just going to multiply this by 9 squared. We do not know the height. So height is going to be the variable that we are looking for. Again, we're going to divide these numbers by 3. So let's divide by 3. And last, we know that the volume is 956. Okay, so now we're ready to start solving. So let's solve what we can on the top with multiplication, because multiplication comes before division in this problem with order of operations, because multiplication happens to be on the top. And then we go towards the bottom. So we know that 9 squared is the same as 9 times 9, which is 81. And clear that out. Okay, so we have 81 times 3.14, and that gives us a total of 254.34. So those two numbers multiplied together, well, technically 3 numbers, 254.34. We're still multiplying by h. And we still have this divided by 3. So we're going to divide by 3 to get h by itself. So let's go ahead and divide this by 3. And that's going to give us a total of 84.78. So 84.78, and we're multiplying this times the height. Again, we still have 956. All right, so isolating this variable, we want to get h by itself. So we're going to undo multiplication through division. 84.78, you're just doing the opposite, which is division. Now we have h all by itself because that equals 1. So h equals 956 divided by 84.78, and that gives us 11.27624. We don't want to write all that down. So this is where our rounding to the nearest tenth is going to come in handy. So that 7 right here is going to tell the 2 to round up to a 3. So we're roughly 11.3 feet for the height. So height equals 11 feet. So again, all we did was the exact same thing, except we had to divide by 3 in order to get the h by itself. So that's the only piece that's different between this lesson and the last lesson. So applying the same knowledge, isolate for h, but to do that we had to isolate the variable. All right, this next cone that we are looking at, again, we don't know the height. We do not know the height, but our radius in this one happens to be 6 yards. 6 yards. Height is on the right. Again, I don't know my height. And it also tells me that volume of this cone, the volume of this cone, let's go ahead and move this up so you can see a little better. Volume of this cone is 75 yards cubed. Okay, same formula as before. I'm going to take pi r squared times my height, and that's going to equal the volume, but before I do that, I also need to divide by 3, because a cone is 1/3 a cylinder. Okay, now let's go ahead and solve the parts that we know. We know pi is 3.14. I know that my radius is 6 squared. And I do not know the height, so I'm just going to leave the height as an h. My volume is 75. And I also needed to divide this by 3. Okay, let's go ahead and solve what we know. Isolate that variable all by itself. Okay, 6 squared, 6 times 6 is 36. So I'm going to take 36 and I'm going to multiply that by 3.14. And that gives me 113 4/100 times my height. And again, I'm still needing to divide by 3 on this side so that h can be all by itself. So 113.04 divided by 3 gives me 37.68 times h. I'm going to divide by 37.68 and divide by 37.68. This gives me 1 on this side, or 1h, which is exactly what I wanted. So now I'm going to take 75, so I'm taking that volume, and I'm dividing it by the radius and pi and the cone. So divide by 37.68. And that gives me 1.99, which is really an odd number to get, right? So let's just go ahead and round that up. Since all this, we're just going to round up to about 2. So 1.99 or 2 yards. So our height equals 2 yards because we rounded. All right, let's go ahead and do one more example before I give you a try it to do. So this last example that we're going to look at, again, we're solving for the height of this the height of the cone. But I want to find a good one. All right. Ooh, let's do one with the diameter. Okay. Okay, in this example, we have a hat, a cone-shaped hat, and this hat kind of looks like this. Look, it looks like any other cone. Okay, and in this cone-shaped hat, we have a diameter of 8 inches. So the diameter from here to here is 8 inches. We do not know the height. So the height we don't know, but we do know that the volume of this hat, is 301 cubic inches. 301.6, inches cubed. All right, so first of all, I cannot use my formula because I have a diameter. So let's get rid of this diameter. Right now it says diameter is 8. We're going to make it say radius is 4. And then we can work with the radius because that's what we need. Okay, we know 3.14. We know that our radius now is 4, so we're going to multiply that by 4 squared. And we still don't know the height of our hat. Our job is to find the hat height by dividing this by 3. And we know that our volume is 301.6 inches. All right, so we're going to go ahead and now solve for the height by isolating that variable. I know that 4 squared is the same thing as 16 because 4 times 4 is 16. So I'm going to take 16 and I'm going to multiply that by 3.14. That gives me a total of 50.24 times the height. And again, it's going to equal 301.6. I need to divide by 3 still to get whatever h is. So 50.24 divided by 3 to finish solving that side. Oh my goodness. Let's round this up to 0.75. That 6 can tell the 4 to round up to a 5. So we get 16.75. All right, now we are ready. We're going to divide by 16.75 and divide by 16.75. So many decimals, and that's all because of pi. Thank you, pi, for being completely irrational, having no end in sight. Okay, divide by 16.75. And we're just going to round this to make the height about 18. So our height is 18 inches. That is a really tall hat. An 18-inch hat. All right, it is your turn now to do a try it. So let's go ahead and get rid of this. And I'm going to give you your try it so that you are ready to solve. Finding the height is what you are looking for. And your cone looks something like this. All right, we don't know the height. And it says it's 15 yards for this. Your volume is 7,200 yards cubed. All right, go ahead and hit pause right now so you don't hear me solving. And then when you're ready, come on back and hit play. All right, so again, we're using pi r squared times the height. It's going to equal the volume, but I had to divide that by 3. So let's plug in what I know. I know 3.14 for pi. My radius is 15 squared times my height. And that's going to equal 7,200. Cannot forget to divide this by 3. All right, 15 squared is what we're going to solve first. You might know what 15 times 15 is really quickly in your head. If you don't, use your calculator. 225 times the height times 3.14. Divide by 3. This is all going to equal 7,200. All right. So I want 225 times 3.14, and that gives me 706.5 times the height. Divide by 3. And that gives me 235.5 times the height, 200. All right, I need h by itself, so I'm going to undo multiplication. Number stuck to a letter is multiplication. So I'm going to divide. Once I divide, that gives me a height of 7,200 divided by 235.5. Boom! Oh my goodness. Okay, we can round this to just be 0.6. So that's 7 tenths of 5 to round to the nearest tenth. Because that's what they want us to do, is round to the nearest tenth. So 30.6 yards. How did you do on this problem? How did you do? Were you able to isolate the variable? Identify any areas that you're struggling in so you can ask questions? And then when you are finished, go ahead and answer your essential question. How do we find the height of a cone? What do we do? And then put your level of understanding out to the side. Where are you at with this? And then you may come on back to the Google Meet and ask for help if you need it, or head on over and do your practice work. As always, I appreciate all of your hard work and effort, and make it a great day.